Good evening, Black people and all allies fighting for Black liberation, Black prosperity, and Black joy. I'm Charles Blow, and welcome to Prime. During former President Trump's zero-tolerance immigration policy, more than 5,000 children were separated from their families at the southern border. President Biden made a pledge in his first few weeks of office to right that wrong somehow, and now we may be learning new details about one way he plans to do it. According to the Wall Street Journal, the Biden administration is considering paying thousands of migrant families who were directly impacted by Trump's zero-tolerance policy about $450,000 per person to compensate for their trauma. The negotiation between the Justice Department and lawyers representing the families in several cases are still ongoing, but payments could amount to nearly $1 million a family, and the total payout could exceed $1 billion. Although compensating migrants for what they endured under the Trump administration may be new, this idea of attempting to compensate for trauma isn't. In fact, the federal government and cities have paid significant amounts over the years to try to compensate for pain, suffering, and violence directed at Black and brown people. It took 6 years, but the Justice Department just agreed to pay $88 million to families of the victims of the racially motivated mass shootings in 2015 at the historically Black Mother Emanuel AME Church in Charleston. And in March, the city of Minneapolis agreed to pay the family of George Floyd $27 million in what the family's attorney called at the time the largest pretrial civil rights settlement ever. Unfortunately, there are countless payments like these, and while economic justice is not the only form of justice, it does mean something to get payouts. But what is the true cost of oppression? Joining me now to discuss is Associate Professor of Political Science at Howard University, Dr. Niambi Carter, and Senior Writer at The Root, Michael Harriot. Michael, I'll start with you with something that's been rattling around in my brain all day about these stories. This is a form of reparations. You know, the only thing that separates this from what would be reparations for slavery is that the proximity to the event is very close, and in many cases, some of the people affected anyway, are still alive. Why can't the government have the same urgency, the same kind of resolution, moral clarity around reparations for enslaved people if they're actually willing to pay out real money to these families for harm inflicted by this government?
Well, so there's two arguments for it, right? So one is the legal argument that, like, technically slavery was constitutional and legal, and that's why there's I know I've said this on your show before, but I always make the argument that the post-slavery reparations is a valid argument from Jim Crow to now, really, and the other reason for that is, like, they feel, like you said, disconnected. The proximity to the event is years. The people who weren't enslaved aren't in front of their faces, so they can't see the harm. And so you're talking about the children of the children of the children of the children of slaves. Well, we know that slavery affected us economically, politically, and socially. So those are the reasons that they are able to kind of realize that, hey, if the person is in front of me and we did them harm, we should pay them money. But they can't seem to reason that they should do the same thing for descendants of slaves.
Dr. Carter, I mean, along those same lines, not only are they saying, we should do something about it, they're paying money, right? And so the argument around reparations is always like, well, should we have an opportunity zone, and should we pay for people to go to college? No, write a check. So it's very clear in these cases, they just say, write the check, and the check will deal with, they'll spend it however they want to spend it or whatever, but that's how the money gets out the door. And they're quickly able, or, in the case of in Charleston, it's, 6 years, but relatively speaking, that's quick, since Black people have been waiting for reparations forever, but they're able to assign a dollar value to it, right? And that's also one of the arguments against reparations, which is like, how would we possibly calculate how much money it is? How do you see this in a historical context?
I mean, I think the hemming about reparations for women is that they implicate not only individuals but institutions. insurance companies, for example, many of them got their start insuring enslaved bodies, right? You're going to also be talking about land, right? You're going to be talking about property ownership. There are a lot of people's families that benefited from enslaved labor. And so when you start talking about the sort of institutional and perhaps individual implications of some of this, I think that's when we start to get the, well, we can't assess a value or we can't assign a value. It's also the paternalism here, right? Because oftentimes you hear the argument against giving people individual payments, like we see in Charleston, and potentially what's going to happen with the the separated families at the border, is that somehow giving people, the descendants of enslaved Africans, money in their hand will somehow lead to some horrible outcomes, right? That people will just misuse this money, money will be spent, and there will be nothing to show for it, which is why you get these conversations about, well, it needs to be a fund or it needs to be some other sort of collective measure that somebody else other than the Black people who are the descendants who are entitled to these funds would be able to manage and control, right? So I think historically, though, I mean, the idea, I think, of reparations for enslavement just feels so alienating for white Americans, quite frankly, because if you look at the public opinion polls, Black and white opinion on this are totally flipped, right? Black people are very much in support of it. White people are very much against it. But I think Michael said something that's very key, and this is what groups like NCOBRA and others who've been fighting for this for a very long time have been saying, is that the harm didn't stop with the end of the institution of slavery. The harm continued for another 100+ years. And then we see the lingering effects of this in property ownership rates, rates of chronic disease, access to health care. I mean, environmental outcomes of this. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. And so we don't have to just say there is a slavery claim. There is also a Jim Crow claim. There is also a post sort of official Jim Crow claim. I mean, people like my parents and others who are still alive, who can talk about the educational effects that they suffered because of Jim Crow racism, who can talk about the differences in pay, where they were able to buy homes, all of those things that affect generational well-being and wealth. Those people are still alive. So there's a claim that could be made there, but people are not ready to have that conversation.
So, Michael, one assumes that the payments are going to go out to people who are not citizens of the United States, right? Many, if not most of the people who were separated at the border never made their claims of asylum and stayed in the country. So what makes them think that they can rope this off? That this can only be isolated to the trauma faced by people who were separated from, families who were separated. Do then Haitians have a claim of trauma that they can make the appeal even if they are not American citizens? And not just this wave of Haitians. The Haitians have been treated differently than other immigrants for decades. So how do they rope this off if they're going to start paying people for trauma that the federal government inflicted, and even if they are not citizens of the United States? How do they not end up having the same case brought by other groups who've also experienced trauma at the hands of the United States?
Well, so again, two things. One is that these people, they're being repaid for something that a judge ultimately ruled was illegal. So they were, the way that they were separated, the way that they were kept in cages, essentially, a judge eventually said that, oh, we can't do that. We were never supposed to be doing that. And so they're getting repaid for their trauma as the result of an illegal act. So that's one part of it. And the other thing is that they can't rope it off, right? Like, that's why you see what's happened in Charleston. And that's why you see, cities paying out millions in increasing numbers for police brutality, right? Because they can't rope it off. They can't rope off the trauma that racism and white supremacy and inequality inflicts upon people. And when you get to present it in front of an objective source, they see it and they understand that you're at fault. So we're probably going to see more and more. It seems like every other day there's someone who's saying, oh, this is the largest police settlement ever, or this is the largest civil settlement ever. And there are going to be more and more cases of these because cities and politicians would rather go bankrupt than to just stop killing and abusing Black people.
Right. Dr. Carter, the United States is not always party to international treaties that allow, other outside citizens to sue. So this is basically a government decision by the Biden administration to do this, not because people brought suit in order to get this to happen. But, broadening the scope even further, how could they make the case that they wouldn't pay people like, say, victims of terror during the war on terror? Judges have said that was also problematic. I guess I'm trying to understand how they can say this is a discrete thing. We will pay people $450,000, and how they can stop that from rippling forward into other things like I said, the war on terror.
Well, I think the United States here is clearly picking their victims, right? You mentioned Haitians a moment ago. Part of what happened with Haitians that has been happening for multiple decades is that you would have lawyers or bringing suit in the US and judges saying you can't keep people in indefinite detention because seeking asylum is not an illegal act. And what did the United States do? Well, we'll interdict them in the water and send them back before they ever make it to the United States, or we'll keep them in Guantanamo, which is technically not in the United States and therefore beyond the reach of the American judiciary. The same is true when we talk about acts of war. Well, all's fair in acts of war. That happened abroad, not in our country. And one of the things that the United States does is even when they are parties to these different international treaties, they cannot personally be pursued by peer nations. So the United States has been very skillful in making sure that they don't have to answer for any of their crimes, their war crimes potentially, in the same way that other countries like we saw with Rwanda and others have had to answer to international tribunals. And that's partly because of the United States' power in the world and the way that they are able to wield their resources and protect themselves and cordon themselves off from most human rights kinds of violations that we see, whether committed in the US or right outside of US borders or in faraway countries. So the United States has been very skillful at keeping its hands clean when it wants to. But here we see, at least potentially with the settlements of these families who've been separated, and just this group of people, because there are a number of people who've been separated. Again, the Haitian case is, that's who was practiced on, quite frankly, to develop these policies that the United States have been implementing. But the United States here is clearly picking its victims and deciding who to remunerate and whose pain is valuable.
Michael Harriot and Dr. Niambi Carter, thank you both for joining me tonight. It was a great conversation.